tell us about this transformation, that moment of clarity, and what you actually did about it, and once we get some traction, actually doing something about it.
Well, the moment was, I went into this rehab, and I still wasn't, I didn't have hope, you know. Like I said, you knew me. I was very hopeless. I didn't think that, anything was going to work for me. And I remember this gentleman came in and just like you did for another program. And I remember him sharing how like he had went to prison for selling cocaine and and how he had had a doctorate degree in his field of study now, and he made six figures a year legally. And and I really didn't hear nothing before nor after I heard six figures a year legally. And but that is all I needed to hear, and for the first time in my life. And then he talked about how his first sponsor was from Baltimore, Maryland. So to hear that you make six figures a year legally, and you mentioned Baltimore, Maryland, he had me hooked. And I remember, and I talked to him, and I had went away for a good fair of months after that, and but I remember always having, said hope that if he could do that, so could I. My relationship with my kids never did blossom to the relationship that I've always wanted. It's a formidable relationship, but it never did blossom to the one that I believed it was going to be when I got clean. They were the reason I got clean, and and they were my driving force. And then somewhere along the line, my behaviors and the way that I thought started to change. And when my behaviors and the way that I thought started to change, the reasons why I do what I do started to change. And it wasn't all about my kids anymore. It was about me wanting to be a better man, and me wanting to, to do something one day that at least my kids could say, that's my dad, and I'm proud of him. And I recently, I have another, a 7-year-old boy, now since I've been clean, who, quite frankly is my reason for living. And, he's my driving force. And I didn't know on a live podcast you could get me to get choked up. But you managed, like, whenever I speak about him and my kids and, what they mean to me. And, there's times that we were talking before the show about little things of depression. And there's times where, because it didn't turn out the way that, we have this glorious vision of what it's going to be. And, because it hasn't exactly turned out to be that glorious vision, it's still a lot better than it was.
When I give talks, I talk about the 12-step program. That's all about behavioral change.
Absolutely.
All about behavioral change. It's all about you. It's all about digesting large chunks of truth about yourself.
Well, I need to learn about myself. And that's what that was dedicated to. And that's, what I found out, was that I need to look at all parts of me. And, we're real good at talking about how I'm a very, I have a sense of humor, and we're real good at talking about our assets. But, real change comes from looking at our liabilities, and real change comes from, a very strong self-acceptance of who we are. And a lot of that is diagnosing the ugly side that is scary to look at. And, but, I found out at a very early time in my recovery that it was imperative that I look at that ugly side for what it was worth. And if I didn't accept that ugly side of me, then I was never going to be able to work on it. And so there was the things that I did. Yeah, I can honestly tell you, I truly believe that putting the drugs down was the easy part. If you'd have told me that before I would have put the drugs down, I would have never guessed that would have been the easy part, because I couldn't do it for so long.
Well, there's a thought in the world that when we start using addictively anything, then we stop growing emotionally. And those thoughts and feelings don't trickle out of the faucet, they explode. And they're difficult to deal with unless we have some help with them.
You remember the Ghostbusters movie?
Sure.
Do you remember when he cracked the safe and the one ghost had trouble getting out of it? But as he got out, it cracked the safe a little bit more. So then two ghosts wiggled out of it. And as they wiggled out, the crack got a little bit bigger. By the time it was all said and done, the ghost was just flooding through the hole. That's my emotions when I got clean. One would pop up and it would be so overwhelming. And then all of a sudden here comes another one. And then before you know it, I have so many coming at me at one point in time that, thank God for them saints that work in them treatment facilities, because sometimes the bears that they deal with, during them first periods of recovery, and I say this, if you're listening, I don't say this to scare you, but to hopefully give you some hope that like I was able to get through that. But I don't think them scary ghosts went away for the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Really, they were always coming, man, and it was an overwhelming experience at times. And there was just be times where floods of emotions would come over me, and I would just break down, like, in front of people, which in the beginning of the show, we talked about not being able to, that was so foreign to me to cry, especially in front of a group of men. I remember being in this facility for people of the locked away, environment. And I remember sharing how I was molested as a kid, and I didn't plan on sharing that. You know what I mean? I definitely didn't plan on sharing it in the environment in which that I was sharing it in. And but it was a flood of emotion that I had suppressed for so long as a child that and growing up, almost as to forget that it happened, that it came out without my approval.
Yeah.
And I remember standing around staring and looking at everybody and saying, I don't know if this was the right place for that to come out. And what I found out, Jim, was I had about 6 tough guys. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I had about 6 tough guys that didn't come up to me all at once. They came up to me privately. But I've never forgot those 6 tough guys. But every last one of them came up to me and they all said, "Me too." And I think for in the recovery field, I think it's more common theme for men to have those experiences than they'd like to admit.
A lot of our issues are sometimes directly related to past trauma as well.
Oh, yes. Yes. But but that was the big thing for me, Jim. It was learning how to deal with these emotions. It was learning how to not run when these emotions came. It was learning how to try to channel the emotions in a more productive manner, as to not like cause more harm to people, because that's what I did my whole life. When I'm hurting, I cause harm to other people, because if I'm hurting, you're going to hurt with me.
Hurt people.
Absolutely.
So, and it's difficult for us to do this by ourselves, Will.
Oh, yes. Yes. It's funny. I was at an establishment last night, and one of the things that, came up, and a lot of people were sharing how they were struggling. They were struggling emotionally. And the common theme from the people who were struggling was, I quit coming. And I quit surrounding myself with you people. And and I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, over my time, that I've tried to change my life. But one of the main factors is I've always surrounded myself with like-minded people. I've always surrounded myself with people in recovery.
It's always to be good with people who you don't have to explain yourself to. And they're not saying, well, why did you do that?
Right. Because they understand.
Yes.
If we share, it is funny because our thoughts, my thoughts are still horrendous at times.
Mm-hmm.
My actions might not match my thoughts, but and I think people are waiting for that to go away, and I can only speak for myself, but I'm not sure that it ever goes away.
Our thoughts are just thoughts.
Right.
Just because we have a thought doesn't make it true. And this frightens people and it scares them, but we have to understand that we still have that addictive part of ourselves.
The funny part is, like, when we change, we tend to change the world around us too sometimes, and we have an impact. We always have an impact with the people that we encounter. It's either positive or negative, one way or the other. We're going to impact them in some form or fashion. And I had this probation officer when I first got clean, and I remember I probably shared a lot more truth with him than I should have, but I was learning this new thing called, like, I'm just going to be honest. Like, you know what I mean? And I remember sharing with him how we were in a bank and a guy came in and he cashed this, and I was really broke. And he cashed this $2,500 cashier check or whatever. I forget what it was. It was so long ago, but I remember thinking to myself, when he gets in the alley, he's in deep stuff. and I remember sharing this with my probation officer, and the only thing my probation officer said was, "Did you call somebody? You know who that somebody is?"
Yes.
And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Good." This probation officer didn't understand addiction before he encountered people like me and you.
Yeah.
And you telling a probation officer you thought about robbing the guy next to you in the bank usually sends them through a whirlwind of emotions.
Oh, sure.
And it didn't. So I think that moment early on in my recovery taught me that one, honesty is always the best key. And two, that we're going to impact people, and we're going to help them see a different side.
Honesty wasn't a language that we usually spoke very well.
No, the language I spoke was, whatever it is you want to hear that's going to get me what I need to get, that's what you're going to hear.
So what you're talking about, Will, is quite often we talk about I always try to introduce the 5-minute rule to people. And that means that, you can have a thought, but what we ask you to do, wait 5 minutes before you act on that. Wait 5 minutes before you buy that shiny thing. Wait 5 minutes before you send that text. Wait 5 minutes before you respond, or pick up that drug, or the slot machine handle, or the drink. That urge is never, ever as strong. So what we try to do is help people develop that pause before reaction.
I think what I do is erase the message 900 times. But I type it out every time. Oh yeah? And but yeah, I just don't send it. It's almost like journaling. I get my thoughts out, but I just don't hit send.
When I'm dealing with people and they say they're afraid to tell the other people, I have urges, I have cravings, I have this, because they're afraid they'll stick them right back into rehab. But I let them know, I says, you're allowed to have them. It's just that understand that that's all they are.
Well, correct. And like you said, at some point, I forget when, in the interview, it's just a thought. And thoughts don't have power. We give them the power, how we react to the thought is generally the problem or the solution, one or the other.
That's your choice.
Right. And that's what it's what happened in the beginning of the show. We talked about that. We talked about that before the show started. You know what I mean? We talked about it in the middle of the show, and at the end, like why we're still doing what we're doing. It's going to be the end result for that too. It's all about choices.
Our purpose is to carry the message. And quite often, what we say to people, I know you've said this before, people come up to us and say, well, I don't know what to do. Well, I don't know what they should do either. However, I'll guarantee you know what not to do.
Right. And that's why we share our experiences with people, because if we've gone through the same thing, then we can, but I personally refrain from telling you what you should and shouldn't do, especially um, I'm not a doctor.
Well,
I'm not going to
general.
tell you how to get through a surgery. You know what I mean? Like I'm not I'm not going to have something health related come down on my conscience because I tried to tell you something that I'm not educated in.
Mhm.
So and you know and that's the things that like people like you taught me. You know, if it's not your experience, don't give advice. Advice kills people.
Oh my gosh, yes. Generally, when somebody speaks some advice, that comes from ego.
Yes. Yes. You know. Um but the experience, all right, this is you're feeling like that? Okay, me too. Or no, I haven't gone through that, but I know Jim has. Why don't you go talk to Jim? Um and those are the things that you know, that's how we help. And you know, I another one of the topics last night was, you know, it was all about goodwill, you know, and yeah, I don't know, man. I've been bit a lot by people, you know, hurt people, you know. But one of the things I've never stopped doing is helping the next person, you know. And there's always this story about helping the snake, pulling the snake from the fire. Well, you grab the snake, pull it out the fire, it bites you. Well, obviously you drop it and it falls back in the fire. Well, what is your next thing to do? You reach back down and pull it back out the fire, you know. And they say, well, why did you still help the snake after it bit you? Well, the snake's nature is to bite. You know what I mean? My nature is to help. I'm never going to stop helping people because you bite me.
When we ask, is it the right thing to do?
Absolutely.
Is it the right thing to do? We Life's really simple. We make it very complicated. So quite often on this show, what we try to impress upon people is that they're spiritual beings and they happen to be having a human experience. And we get so attached to this human experience, to people, places, and things, and that life's absurd, Will. It's amusing.
It is.
We try to put order on chaos.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
So tell us about your life today. Tell us about the action and effort that you put into it, that behavioral change that you had. So tell us about your life today.
Well, it's nothing special. It's far more than I ever would have bargained for. You know, it's still the same. And that's a blessing. Um, I think that, you know, for me, like I'm glad that I don't feel like I've catapulted, you know what I mean, to something different because it keeps me grounded and it keeps me where I know that I need to be. Yes, you know, I've done things with my life that I didn't, you know, I didn't think was ever possible. Um, but I don't really like talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I don't like really drawing too much attention to the things that I do outside of the realm of
Mm-hmm.
helping others achieve a better way of
Well,
life.
sure. Well, are you worried when the phone rings?
No,
Are you worried when there's a knock at the door?
no.
Okay. Do you believe that you're confident in the decisions you make?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe that you treat people with courtesy and respect?
Most of the time.
Okay.
I'm human.
Okay. Do you have a $2 to buy yourself a cup of coffee?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think this whole interview is the longest I've gone without drinking coffee. But yeah, you know, I'm gonna grab a cup when I leave. I know that like if I need to stop and get gas, I'm gonna be fine. I know that if either one of the exes call me, you know, about the children, I'm gonna be fine. It isn't always as much as I would like, but generally, and even when life gets a little strenuous and I still can't always pay the bills in full, I'm never stressed.
Are you showing? Are you showing up?
Absolutely.
Are you showing up in life?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that's funny that you said that. Because I often talk about how I felt like, you know, I portrayed this tough guy growing up. And and how, like, my view of a tough guy was the guy who would fight at the drop of a hat, and I I won't fight at the drop of a hat. And I'm a tougher guy now than I've ever been in my whole entire life, because when life shows up, I don't run. And I used to run every time life showed up. When school wasn't ideal, run. I quit. You know what I mean? Well, when I don't like my boss, because I really don't, it has nothing to do with the boss, but I don't feel like getting up for work every day, so I'm going to make an excuse that I don't like the boss. And he said something to me, even though his job as the boss is to tell me what to do, I'm going to run, and that's what my life was. I was literally a punk my whole life, and I don't believe that I'm a punk anymore. I don't believe that. I don't think that life is as overwhelming as it used to be.
Well, quite often we have help people understand the difference between arrogance and confidence. Arrogant people, no one wants to be around them. Confident people attract people. So, Will, what would you have to say to some younger, older people out there who are sitting there thinking, boy, this sounds like pie in the sky stuff. This sounds great. How does that apply to me?
Well, I thought so too. And it applies to anybody who's willing to work for it. And and is it going to happen for you if you just wish? No. Can it happen for anyone? Absolutely. But it's, I love the saying, somebody said, well, I don't know that that's going to work for me. You're right. And, the person who says, well, I know that could work for me, you're also right. You know what I mean? So it depends on what, it's about action and effort. How much action and effort we're going to put into it, that's what we're going to get out of it. And if they really don't believe that it can work for them, then it's not going to, because they're not going to put forth the effort. But if you firmly believe that it's going to work for you and you're willing to put the effort in, I guarantee you it could work. I failed at this 7 times because I was never willing to put the work in, and I still fail, so to speak, but not like I did, because I don't give up anymore. I don't give in anymore. And like I said, when life shows up, like, I show up too. Like, life does not defeat me anymore. I take blows. Life dishes out some blows sometimes, but I'm built to take a hit.
You're resilient.
It's a 12-round fight, and you're not knocking me out in the first round.
Taking a licking and keep on ticking.
Absolutely.
Like Timex watches.
Absolutely.
So you talked about action and effort, Will, and I think we'll kind of end with this. This is a story we've told often. I'm sure I've told it the time that we were up at the place where I met you. And there was a person that prayed to win the lottery every day. Sweat blood, just prayed and prayed and prayed. Nothing ever happened. And they got so angry that they went outside and they yelled up at the sky. They said, God, why won't you let me win the lottery? And God called back down and said, could you meet me halfway and at least buy a ticket?
Absolutely.
So the idea is about buying a ticket. And it sounds like you've bought the ticket into your life, Will.
Yeah. I prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And then I, at some point realized, like, he's only going to give me what I meet him halfway for.
Absolutely. Do our part, other people will do theirs. And to all of our brothers and sisters, and I think I can speak for Will, all of our sisters and brothers in recovery out there, we're all very, very proud of you. And that comes from the bottom of our hearts. So at the end of every podcast, we offer a free prescription, fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Unplug your televisions and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself, do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Till all are free, none are free. Namaste. I love you, brother.
Love you too, Jim.
please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.